Hello, my friends. In today's episode, we will discover together how human knowledge was born. So I ask you to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new episodes of this series. Hold on tight because this episode is fantastic, my friends. So, shall we dive into the video? Chapter 1. Introduction. The beginning of everything. In the ancestral silence of the earth, long before cities, words, and books, there was only man and the mystery of the world around him. The fire burned, lightning tore through the sky, and the sound of the wind seemed to whisper questions that no one knew how to answer. It was in that moment, between fear and curiosity, that something extraordinary happened. The human being began to think. For the first time, we looked at the sky and didn't just see stars. We sought to understand why they existed. The spark of curiosity ignited a flame that would never be extinguished. That flame was called knowledge, and it was this that would change everything. From instinctive hunters, we became explorers of our own minds. Every doubt gave rise to an idea, and every idea to a new step in our journey as a species. From caves to ancient civilizations, humans began to decipher symbols, question gods, and observe the universe with eyes of discovery. This is the beginning of humanity's greatest adventure, the search for truth, a journey that transformed us from mere survivors into creators of wisdom. And it is exactly this story that you will learn about now. The story of the birth of knowledge. The magical moment when man stopped merely existing and began to perceive himself and the universe around him. Chapter 2. The Awakening of Consciousness. It all began when the human being stopped looking only with their eyes and started to see with their thoughts. Amid the sounds of the forest and the crackling of the fire, a new perception emerged: consciousness. It was when we understood that we weren't just in the world, we were part of it. This awakening was the first step toward knowledge. Primitive man began to observe the cycles of the moon, the movement of the stars, and the behavior of animals. Every discovery, even without words, was a seed of wisdom planted in the heart of humanity. Curiosity became the force that pushed us beyond survival. We wanted more than to eat, hunt, and sleep. We wanted to understand. And this desire to comprehend the why of things ignited a flame that would never be extinguished. Over time, the stories told around campfires became the first records of the human mind, attempts to explain the invisible, the mystery, the divine. It was the beginning of abstract thought, imagination, and philosophy in its purest form. It was there, in front of the fire, that man began to ask questions that echo to this day. Where did we come from? Why do we exist? What lies beyond the stars? These questions shaped history. They were the starting point for everything that came after, from philosophy to science, from art to technology. The awakening of consciousness was more than a mental change. It was the birth of the thinking soul, the moment when humanity began its journey toward the light of understanding. It was when man began to trade believing for understanding and to seek meaning in things beyond myths. Chapter 3. The Birth of Philosophy. When curiosity became consciousness and thought took shape, the human being began to do something revolutionary. Think about their own thinking. Thus was born philosophy, the art of questioning everything. In the ancient cities of Greece, India, and China, the first sages emerged who dared to ask what was previously forbidden. What if the gods aren't the explanation for everything? Thales of Miletus observed the movement of the waters. Pythagoras saw numbers in the harmony of the universe, and Socrates challenged everyone to look within themselves. Philosophy was the first science of the mind, a beacon that illuminated the path of reason. It taught us to doubt, to analyze, and to understand that truth is not only in beliefs, but in the relentless pursuit of it. While in the East, Confucius preached balance between man and nature, in the West, Plato spoke of the soul and justice. Human thought began to expand as never before, connecting ideas, cultures, and worldviews. And the most incredible thing is that it all stemmed from a simple spark: doubt. Doubt that transformed into questions, and questions into wisdom. It was the birth of rational thought, of the philosophical gaze that made us understand that understanding the world is also understanding ourselves. Philosophy was humanity's first step toward what we now call knowledge, the beginning of our long and fascinating journey through the mind and reason. And now we arrive at one of the most revolutionary moments in the history of thought, when man learned to eternalize his ideas. Chapter 4. The Power of Symbols, the Invention of Writing. For thousands of years, human knowledge lived and died with those who possessed it. Stories, myths, and teachings were passed down by voice, fragile as the breath of the wind. But then, something grand happened. The human being discovered how to give shape to words. On the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the Sumerians began to carve symbols into clay tablets. They were simple marks, but laden with power, the power to record thought. There, writing was born, and with it, a new era of humanity. Writing freed knowledge from oblivion. Now, wisdom could cross generations, distances, and even entire civilizations. Each carved symbol was a fragment of the human mind preserved in time. Egyptians, Chinese, Mayans, and so many other peoples created their own systems. And what was once merely sound became permanent memory. But more than that, writing was a mirror of the human soul. It transformed thought into something visible, tangible. For the first time, ideas became immortal. History, philosophy, science, and even dreams could be stored, studied, and shared. This breakthrough changed everything. With writing, libraries, records, laws, and the concept of civilization were born. The word became the fundamental brick of human knowledge, the link that united the past, present, and future. The invention of writing was more than a technical achievement. It was the moment when man learned to converse with time. And that is why, to this day, every idea that transformed the world began with a symbol. Now we arrive at the point where man began to trade myth for logic and to observe the universe with scientific eyes. Chapter 5. The Birth of Science. For millennia, humanity explained the world through myths and gods. Lightning was the fury of the heavens, diseases were punishments, and destiny, an invisible and inevitable force. But something began to change. Man started to observe, not just believe. In ancient Greece, thinkers like Aristotle and Archimedes began to look at the world with a new gaze, that of reason. It was no longer enough to accept sacred stories. It was necessary to understand the causes. Why do bodies fall? Why do the stars move? Why does nature follow patterns? Thus was born scientific thought. While philosophers sought the why, scientists began to search for the how, and this simple shift in questioning transformed everything. Observation gave way to experimentation, and curiosity became method. Egypt, Mesopotamia, and later Alexandria, the beacon of ancient knowledge, became centers where brilliant minds gathered wisdom from across the known world. Mathematicians, astronomers, and physicians began to build the foundation of science as we know it. It was there, among papyri, calculations, and celestial observations, that the idea was born that the universe could be understood through laws, and that knowledge could be proven. Science was the next step of the human mind in its journey toward truth. From that point on, man ceased to be merely an observer of nature and became its interpreter. And so, every discovery, every experiment, and every theory became another stone in the infinite temple of knowledge. We now arrive at one of the most exciting chapters of this journey, the moment when knowledge became a flame to be protected, passed down from generation to generation. Chapter 6. The Flame of Knowledge, Preserving and Sharing Wisdom. With science and philosophy ignited, the human being realized something essential. Knowledge only survives when it is shared. Thus were born the great libraries, schools of thought, and primitive universities, sacred places where wisdom was gathered, studied, and transmitted. The grandest of all was the Library of Alexandria, a true beacon of ancient knowledge. In it were stored thousands of manuscripts from every corner of the known world. It was as if the entire human mind were gathered in one place. But knowledge, like fire, needs to be cared for. A single moment of neglect can extinguish it. When Alexandria burned in flames, an immense part of humanity's wisdom was lost forever. Even so, the flame did not go out. Monks copied books by hand in monasteries. Arab philosophers translated Greek texts and preserved them during the Dark Ages. Each generation had its guardians of the light, people who believed that the mind is humanity's true treasure. And it was this courage to preserve that kept the bridge between the past and the future alive. Knowledge withstood time, wars, ignorance, and oblivion. And even when the world seemed to plunge into darkness, there was always someone with a lit torch. A teacher, a student, a thinker. The flame of knowledge never stopped shining. And thanks to it, we continue to walk toward tomorrow. Chapter 7. The Legacy, Knowledge as Humanity's Greatest Power. Over millennia, every discovery, every recorded thought, every shared theory built an invaluable legacy for humanity. Knowledge is not just information, it is power, freedom, and transformation. Thanks to philosophy, we learned to question and reflect on life. Thanks to writing, we were able to preserve the past and learn from it. Thanks to science, we understood the laws that govern the world and transformed our lives with technology and medicine. Each civilization added something to the great mosaic of human wisdom, from the Library of Alexandria to the manuscripts preserved by monks, from the schools of Athens to modern universities, from the observations of ancient astronomers to the theories that changed our view of the universe. The true power of knowledge lies in its ability to transform individuals and societies. It allowed us to create cities, explore continents, fly through the skies, and even look at the stars and understand our place in the cosmos. And most importantly, this legacy is not just historical. It invites us to continue the journey. Every person who learns, questions, and shares ideas becomes a guardian of this infinite flame. Knowledge is, and always will be, the force that drives humanity. It is the greatest treasure we have, more valuable than gold, more enduring than any empire. And it is exactly this legacy that inspires us to keep exploring, discovering, and evolving. Chapter 8. Conclusion. The journey of knowledge and the flame that unites us. And so, from the silence of the caves to the libraries that defied time, from the philosophy that taught us to question to the birth of science that gave us the keys to the universe, we realize that knowledge is humanity's greatest force. Every recorded thought, every carved symbol, every shared idea brought us to this point. To you now, watching and reflecting on what makes us unique, our curiosity, our thirst for understanding, and our desire to evolve. The journey of knowledge is not just of the past. It continues in us, in every question we ask, in every book we read, in every discovery we share. It is a flame that crosses generations, that illuminates the present and opens paths to the future. And you, watching now, are part of this story. Every like, every subscription, every time you share this journey with someone who loves to learn, you keep this flame alive. So, if you want to keep exploring the history of humanity, the great ideas and the mysteries of our evolution, leave your like, subscribe to our channel, The Human Journey. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss any new episodes of this series, and share this video with those who love stories of wisdom and discovery, because the search for knowledge never ends, and the journey continues now with you. A big hug, stay with God, and see you next time.